My name is Tanya, and I am one of the youth services librarians at Arapahoe Libraries. Welcome to our virtual book party. If you've never been to one of these parties, essentially we go around, we take turns and talk about different books that we've read lately that we think that you might like as well. Don't worry about keeping track of the titles or the authors. I will send out the list of books very shortly after this program concludes. We do these every month, usually on the third Tuesday, so keep an eye out for our next ones. And we always switch up who's book talking. Just so you know, after the program is over, I will be sending out a survey just to ask about your thoughts on this program, what you liked, what we can do better. And definitely we will be inquiring about the age groups and just the ranges of books we are talking and what you think of that. So be on the lookout for that survey. We are going to go around and do introductions. We will just go in alphabetical order. So Allison, you're up.
My name's Allison, and I'm one of the adult advisory librarians for the district.
My name is Dax, and I'm a library specialist lead at the South Glen branch.
Chuck.
Oh, sorry. Charles. I am one of the reference librarians at Arapahoe Libraries.
Mary.
I was trying to figure out where I am alphabetically. I'm Mary Cooner, and I am one of the early literacy librarians, but today I'll be talking about middle grade, young adult, and I think I have one adult graphic novel to talk about too.
So, hey, I'm Ted. I'm a youth services librarian for the district, and I'm delighted that I get to actually talk about adult books for once. So.
This is such a classic librarian thing that we insist on going in alphabetical order, but we cannot do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say we didn't do very well there, but we tried. So it's a Tuesday that feels like a Monday. We did it. So we are gonna go in order. Every person will have about one minute-ish to book talk their book. When I'm timing them, when their time is up, you'll see a time slide, and that's just their cue that they should wrap up their book talk. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to use the chat and Q&A function, and we will, one of us will get back to you. I think that's it. Allison, did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
All right, we will get started with you then. Here we go.
Okay, this is Cold Millions by Jess Walter. It's historical fiction. It's about two orphans who are just barely getting by as day laborers in 1909 in Spokane, Washington, and they get caught up in the labor movement around the mining industry. It's got an amazing cast of characters. There's union organizers, your greedy mine owners, suffragettes, prostitutes. What I really loved is it felt like a mashup of like a New York labor movement story, but meets a Western. It's a really different look at Western history than the more typical ranching kind of thing that we see. I highly recommend it.
My first book is Eat a Peach by David Chang. If you're not familiar with David Chang, he became pretty famous a couple years ago. He started Momofuku Noodle Bar back in the mid-2000s and has recently opened Milk Bar and also stars in Netflix's Ugly Delicious. He had a hand in raising the profile of noodle restaurants in the United States, specifically things like pho and ramen. In the book, he discusses not only food, but also his mental health, growing up as a Korean American in the United States, and his leadership style. I really like this because I've taken a lot of his leadership aspects and kind of would like to meld them into my own. He even includes emails that went back and forth during his time when he was running Momofuku on a daily basis. It includes everybody in the restaurant so that there's no gaps in the knowledge that goes from day to day. So I highly recommend it. It's very interesting and a great read.
The Ruthless Lady's Guide to Wizardry by C.M. Wagoner. This is an absolutely brilliant historical fantasy. Deli is a heroine after my own heart, and I have a feeling you'll love her too. This book is chock full of strong women kicking butt, fighting crime, committing crime, and just plain being amazing. This is a lovely queer read with magic mayhem and gutter raised charm.
That was so fast.
Don't mess around.
All right, the first book I'm going to talk about is middle grade fiction, which generally, for those of you who don't have kids, is or have grown kids, is for older elementary kids. And Show Me a Sign by Anne Claire Lizotte is an own voices historical fiction about a young girl who lives in a deaf community on Martha's Vineyard in the early 1800s. Mary Lambert's great-grandfather, the first deaf resident of the island, helped settle the land, and almost everyone, deaf and hearing alike, communicate with sign language unique to the island. Mary has never felt ostracized or outcast. Life on her island is simple and everyone works together. Although tensions are high in her own family, as her brother was recently killed in an accident. However, when a stranger comes to stay, ostensibly to study why this island has a higher concentration of deaf than the rest of the population, Mary becomes a, quote, living specimen against her will and must find a way not only to escape, but also preserve her way of life and repair her fractured family. The author is deaf and communicates using sign language.
All right, so my first one is called Foxy from George Saunders, and if you are a fan of humor or if you love ink illustrations, this would be a great one to pick up. It's about, or written by, as you might have guessed by the title, an anonymous fox who is absolutely fascinated with humans. He loves everything that we do. He just thinks that we're really neat and kind of weird. That's probably because as he writes a letter to humanity, he doesn't really understand what we're doing, and he starts noticing that we're putting up this huge development right beside his den. Now, it's kind of funny and also kind of tragic. Like, for instance, he thinks that he can get them to stop building by occasionally stealing hammers, and he just sounds very, very, very confused about, well, I guess maybe they had more hammers. So he is writing a letter to humanity. Now, one of the things that makes this particularly interesting and funny is that Fox 8 does not have particularly good writing skills. So it's kind of written like a very bizarre Flowers for Algernon story. But again, if you like humor or really, really wild ink illustrations, that'd be a great one to pick up. It's also more or less a short story, technically a novella, but yeah.
You're still muted.
Still on mute. Have I not learned anything yet in this? The Secret Life of Dorothy Soames by Justine Collin. It's nonfiction, but this is the kind of nonfiction that if it was fiction, you would say that is the most preposterous plot. This could never happen. It's ridiculous. The author grew up, it's a memoir. She grew up thinking her mother was descendant from a very wealthy aristocratic English family, and she got sent to endless piano lessons, penmanship, painting classes, posture classes, all to impose her mother's standards on her. But something about her mother's story never really added up. And after her mother's death, she starts investigating, and you find out very early, and then find out more, that her mother was actually raised in this horrifying orphanage, was desperately poor. And how did she make up this whole background? How did she become the epitome of an English lady? You just have to read this story to find out. And again, it's nonfiction. This really is true.
My next book is Cookish by Milk Street and Christopher Kimball. This is a cookbook. I really enjoy a good cookbook, and this is one of the better ones that's come out in the last few years. Everything in this book is broken down by how things are prepared. So whether it's grilled or steamed or baked, and most of the ingredients are fairly simple and easily accessible. There's a lot of vegetarian dishes in here. There is meat as well, but it mixes in a lot of cultures as well. So you don't get things that are strictly what we're traditionally accustomed to. So you get things like kimchi, fried rice, pasta with harissa seasoning, which is from Northern Africa, and a veggie tart with feta cheese. So I highly recommend this. Most of the recipes are pretty easily tackled and easily accessible. Highly recommend.
Sherlock Holmes and the Shadewell Shadows is the first in the Cthulhu case books by James Lovegrove. What if the consistently logical famous detective who relies so keenly on observation of the tangible world were to come up against inexplicable madness and magic? The casebook introduces Lovecraft's elder gods and mythos to the traditional Holmes setting and atmosphere. While this doesn't add to either mythos, it is a super fun reimagining that is just the right bit of fluff, horror, and mystery.
I love the way you described that, Dax. It sounds really cool. This book, Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, is absolutely the book, the pandemic book I needed, and I need the sequel immediately. But since this just came out in January, I think it's going to be a while before I get it, sadly. Fans of the Nevermore series with Morgan Crow, or Harry Potter and the Percy Jackson books and the Rick Riordan Presents books will absolutely love Amari. I guarantee it. No question. This is a middle grade, but honestly, if you are an adult who likes Harry Potter, you will enjoy this, or Percy Jackson, or any of those. You will enjoy this. It has all the tropes that we love. A teenage kid discovers they have secret abilities, is taken to a place they never knew existed, and has to prove their worth, all while navigating the complicated world of friendships and middle school. It's been 6 months since Amari's brother went missing, and nobody has figured out what happened. The police have all but given up, and Amari's mother is struggling. Amari is determined to find out the truth, and when a secret message arrives from her brother telling her that she's been nominated to try out for the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs, she knows there's a chance. That's her chance. But first of all, she has to come to terms with the reality that not only does the supernatural world exist alongside the world she's already known, but there's a whole agency devoted to protecting it. This is filled with adventure, humor, friendship, deception, and intrigue, plus a were-dragon for a roommate, and weapons that subdue your enemy by making them laugh uncontrollably. This is a wonderful first book in what I hope will be a long series.
So this is, now that I've talked about a little bit of text, I'm going to go to what everyone who knows me is sick of me talking about, graphic novels. This is the first Power and Magic anthology published by Power and Magic Press. We have this in our collection, and I'm glad that I am talking about this one because the second anthology just came out. These are particularly beautiful because what Power and Magic Press does is that they highlight and publish BIPOC authors and queer authors, and particularly intersectional authors. So these are all these are all independent graphic novel artists who are telling short stories, all women-loving women, and all of them are set in fantasy. One of the really, of course, it's kind of hard to talk about an anthology, but one of the really wonderful things about this particular anthology is that aside from getting a lot of different, really incredible art styles pulled together, this is one of the very few anthologies that is actually genuinely all ages. Me, as a children's librarian, I am inherently suspicious of anyone who says that something is all ages, because that essentially just means it's for kids and you might be able to tolerate it. This isn't actually deals with a broad range of emotions, an incredible cast of talent, and if you love graphic novels or graphic art or are looking for something that's new and wonderful, that'd be a great one to pick up. Also, the sequel is coming out very soon. I think it got delayed.
Okay, Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. This comes out next week, and there's been so much buzz about this book. Grace is a straight-A workaholic who just finished a PhD in astronomy, and so she goes to Las Vegas with her friends to celebrate. gets drunk and marries a woman she just met in Las Vegas. So what happens when her maniacally organized life just falls apart like that? But it's not just the lighthearted romance that the synopsis implies. It's about her mental health. It's about the weight of expectations, especially from her parents. It's about found families. And most important, it's about the friendships she had in Portland, and then one she develops in New York when she goes to meet her wife. So a really nice contemporary book for everyone.
Buttermilk Graffiti by Edward Lee. Edward Lee came to prominence kind of a couple years ago on Top Chef, and this is his some of his works. He's done some writing as he travels around the country. It's a great collection of stories about immigrants who have come to the United States and how their food has changed and evolved a little bit using different ingredients, because you can't always find the exact ingredients when you're from somewhere else. So he discusses Cambodians in Lowell, Massachusetts, Russians in Brighton Beach in New York, the large Vietnamese population in the Gulf Coast, and how their dishes have evolved and changed with these new ingredients that they found here in the United States. Things like matcha beignets, butternut squash schnitzel, and if you're a fan of Anthony Bourdain, this is as close as I've come to something similar to a Bourdain. He talks a lot about the dark side of certain cities and cultures, and it's a great and interesting read.
How Did They Them? A Visual Guide to Non-Binary Pronouns and the World of Gender Fluidity by Stuart Getty. This is a fast, lovely read. I appreciate Stuart and the amount of heart they put into this. The guide would be great for those new to using they, them pronouns, whether for themselves or others. It's also great for those comfortable in using those pronouns while giving you a bit of history and context. While Stuart uses emotional appeals, this book is strongly informational and a great guide, and the visuals are solid.
Dax, you are the fastest book talker, and you get everything said. I'm really impressed right now.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so I have a graphic novel now, and I'm not sure if we have this on our YA shelves or on our adult shelves, but either way, I think either group would enjoy it. And it's called The Sacrifice of Darkness, the story written by Roxane Gay, and Tracy Lynn Oliver, Rebecca Kirby, and James Fenner, I believe, were involved in the artwork. And I looked this up on Goodreads, and it seemed to generate a lot of feelings. People either loved it or hated it. I actually really enjoyed it. It's based on Roxane Gay's short story, We Are the Sacrifice of Darkness, and it's set in a world in which there is no sunlight. During the day, towns are lit by gas lamps in order to mimic the mark of chime that once existed, because a miner named Hiram Hightower flew a jet directly into the sun and it went out. So the story is told primarily through Hiram's son Joshua, and he and his mother are ostracized by the town because of what his father did, and he has little interaction with others until a classmate named Claire befriends him. So his relationship with Claire mimics the flashbacks we see of Hiram's relationship with the wealthy Mara, who becomes his wife and Joshua's mother. The illustrations are in muted oranges, yellows, and reds, and occasional blues. It touches on issues of corporate greed, mental health, bullying, and sacrifice. It's a compelling read that I am still thinking about.
All right, we stand on guard. This is Brian K. Vaughn's seminal sort of alternate history of the Iraq War. One of the things that one of the reasons that I wanted to book talk this was because I realized that as much as I love Saga, and also if you love Saga or Paper Girls or Pride of Baghdad, I actually hadn't read this one, even though it continuously comes up on lists of, graphic novels to read. This is a fascinating little and again, little. This is a very short graphic novel. I think it's like six issues bundled together, but it is an extremely passionate anti-war statement that kind of just radiates with Vaughn's extreme disgust with the Iraq War. Essentially, it's an alternate future where the White House is attacked by unknown assailants. The United States government, seeing an opportunity, decides to blame Canada and invade, and also while mounting a counterinsurgency against Canadian freedom fighters, steal all of their water, which naturally, as a result of climate change, we are running out of. So it's up to a small band of freedom fighters to drive out the Americans. Again, it's extremely passionate. It is very graphic. Yeah, sorry. It is kind of a violent little novel, though, but it's definitely well worth. It's a very short time commitment. So that is We Stand on Guard.
Okay, Fortune Favors the Dead by Stephen Spotswood is a mystery. This mystery, it flew a little under the radar last year, but it's the start of a great series, or I hope it's a new series. It's got this great 1940s New York vibe. You can probably tell by the cover. It reads like an old noir mystery, but the characters have a very modern feel. They're a great pair. Will is the person on the cover. It's short for her real name is Willow Jean, which she hates. She's a former runaway turned circus performer and now an assistant to the most prominent PI in New York, Lillian Pentecost. The mystery is interesting, but what I loved is the setup for the series. They bring this 1940s version of feminism and LGBT representation, but without losing the 1940s flavor or ever feeling like the time and the place doesn't, and the things don't match. Again, great setup for a new series.
Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. This takes place in the 1920s in Mexico during the jazz era, and a woman is cleaning her grandfather's house and comes across an unknown box and opens it, only to discover it unleashed the Mayan god of death, and takes her on an adventure from the Yucatan jungles to the lights of Mexico City. If you're waiting for Mexican Gothic, this may be a really good warm-up for you. It is the same author and kind of gets you introduced to some of the Mayan lore that go along with it. I really recommend this. It's interesting, kept me engaged, and a very well-written book.
Radical Candor, Be a Kick-Ass Boss Without Losing Your Humanity by Kim Malone Scott. While this is written for managers/bosses, I'd recommend it for anyone in the workplace. Kim Scott's observations have wide application and do a great job of prioritizing the need to treat everyone as a human being first and foremost. The title refers to the ideal quadrant on a chart with two axes: care personally and challenge directly. It is important to care about the people you work with, but easy to let that care stifle the need to be honest with them. A quadrant called ruinous empathy. Alternately, you can offer criticism without demonstrating care and end up in the obnoxious aggression quadrant. On top of this framework, Scott presents a number of personal examples and realistic concrete practices that point toward a non-zero-sum environment in which individuals and business can achieve great results. It's really wonderful, and the audiobook is really pleasant. She reads it herself.
So my cat has joined me to talk about this book. It's called Dancing at the Pity Party by Tyler Fetter. As you can see, it's a dead mom graphic memoir, so that's kind of an intense subject, but she's written and drawn a poignant, honest account of her relationship with her mother and how she dealt with and continues to deal with grief over her mother's death from cancer. She comes to terms with being a member of the, quote, Dead Moms Club, and Dead Moms Club, sorry, I thought that sounded funny, and describes the awkwardness and strangeness of going through life after losing a loved one, and how relationships with others change as one gets used to this new normal. Her simple cartoon-like illustrations fit the memoir style, and she tells her story with warm humor and deep affection for her family. I'm just thinking this reminds me a little bit of Roz Chast, but younger, definitely.
All right, so this one is Ryoko by Eldo Yoshimizu. And if you are a fan of either pulp action, 80s and 90s manga, or revenge, who isn't a fan of revenge? This would be a great one to pick up. It is, in spite of the cover, this was actually published, or the English translation for this was just recently published, and this book is not that old. It is a sort of anthology tribute to the pulp and neo-noir manga of the 80s and 90s, and it's about a young woman named Ryoko who is trying at once to solve the mystery of what happened to her mother, who is married to, or was married to, one of the most powerful crime lords of the era, until he was sort of demoted is the wrong word. He got on the wrong side of a more powerful crime boss and was exiled to a fictionalized Middle Eastern country, where when this book opens, Ryoko has just witnessed a coup attempt and has taken two girls under her wing as sort of her adopted daughters. It's kind of a hard plot to describe, but if you love manga or if you love really sketchy ink illustrations, that'd be a great one to pick up. The art is phenomenal. So yeah, that is Ryoko.
Okay, Gollum and Ginny by Helene Weckler. This is a 2013 book that combines Jewish and Middle Eastern folklore and literature. A Polish rabbi brings a golem to life, who's then transported to New York. And in the meanwhile, Syrian refugees have moved, not Syrian, the immigrants have moved to New York with an old copper flask, and a Ginny is released. And this is all taking place in 1899 New York. The two of them, the golem and the Ginny, actually meet up and then are trying to establish a life for themselves in New York. What I really loved was the settings, from old world Europe to the deserts of ancient Syria, but most important, the New York setting. I mean, it reads like almost like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, about the immigrant experience coming to New York at that time. You just felt like you were there. And she has a sequel, The Hidden Palace, coming out in June. And I can't wait for that one now. And it was great on audio as well.
My final book is Here for It, or How to Save Your Soul in America by R. Eric Thomas. This was a very entertaining and great read. Thomas discusses a crossroad of topics ranging from growing up in a Black middle-class neighborhood in Maryland, attending a very conservative church, also attending a white suburban private school, discovering his sexuality while attending a very conservative church. He does a great job of illustrating a lot of his stories. My favorite one was probably on a trip to New York City. He went to a Puerto Rican hair salon and got his hair straightened, and realizes why Black people no longer try to straighten their hair. He encountered several problems with this, including a burning scalp, washing his hair the next day, and sleeping, I think something about a cap, not sleeping with a cap on. So it was a very entertaining and well-written book, and I highly recommend it if you're looking for something beyond what we see in our daily lives.
Hammers on Bone is the first in a Persons Non Grata series. This is a short novella, and it packs a hard punch. When a kid tries to hire John Persons to kill his stepfather, the private investigator is intrigued. Persons quickly determines the stepfather isn't of this earth. Sometimes it takes a monster to kill a monster. Ka is a master wordsmith, and this Cthulhu noir horror story is pure magic. There were times I just chills on my body. It is wonderful, and I highly recommend. It is something you'll have to prospector, or you could suggest it as a purchase on Overdrive.
All right, my final book is Bedazzled by Ryan LaSala. And I picked this up because the premise sounded so interesting to me. It's kind of a bit of a coming of age, a slightly fluffy romance, but also it's about cosplay and crafting. So Raffi, the main character in this story, is very much into creating cosplays. He's a crafter. He is so into his work that he live streams his work on websites, so, and he has like 1,000 followers who watch what he does. And so he is heading toward the biggest event of his cosplay career called Controverse. And he has created some magical costumes for himself and his best friend May, because they have to compete as a twosome in this competition. The only problems are that he has to do all of this work in secret because his mother, who is a serious artist and an art gallery owner, disapproves of his work, his craft work. And the other problem is he is also competing against his ex-boyfriend. So it's told in flashbacks about how his relationship with Luca started and how he got Luca interested in cosplay, and then continues on, and we see what's happening now with their cosplay competition and how they end up having to become allies in order for him to win.
Oh my God, you are all so lucky that I get to go last, because I get to tell you about alternately either the absolute best or absolute worst Stephen King book that you've ever heard of. This one is called Cycle of the Werewolf, and it is about a werewolf that terrorizes a small, stop me if you've heard this one before, a small Maine town in the middle of nowhere in the 1970s. It has everything about Stephen King that you alternately either absolutely hate or absolutely love, which is what makes this actually an extremely entertaining. It's not scary, because let's be honest, Stephen King hasn't been scary in like 30 years. It is absolutely fascinating though. It cycles, the cycle of the werewolf starts in January and ends in December. So each month gets its own little short story in which the werewolf stalks and murders someone. It has all of the casual cruelty, all of the bizarre characterizations that King is known for, and it also features some really interesting like pulp throwback oil illustrations, and I can't remember who actually did the illustrations, but if you love either werewolves, horror, or like really schlocky lit, that would be a great one to pick up.
Thanks, everyone. You guys did great. I got lots more books on my to-read list. That is all of the books that we have for you tonight. As I mentioned in the beginning of this, I will be sending out the list of books right after this is over. And please sign up for our future book parties. The next one is in March, on this March 16th. Same day, February 16th, March 16th. Please sign up. The signups are already open. It will be mostly different book talkers and definitely different books. So we hope to see you all again soon.
Tanya, can I put in a quick plug too for in March? We are also having a virtual picture book party that the Storytime specialists and early literacy librarians do. So if you have young children, that's one that's worth, it's similar format, but we talk specifically about picture books. And in March, we are going to feature award-winning picture books of all kinds of awards. So look for that in March and sign up if you are interested. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all to our book talkers. We appreciate it.